on my notes. It says, note that it has been a pleasure to chair the ICP today. So I shall do that. It has been a pleasure to chair the ICP to date. I can honestly say that. And it has genuinely contributed with a lot of thinking across South Yorkshire. It certainly helped me to get to grips and get to understand a bit more about what's going on in South Yorkshire when it comes to health and well-being. And I think we've made huge progress over the last 3 and a bit, nearly 4 years. There are, as you know, ongoing discussions to inform the development of new arrangements, and that's on the agenda for today. I should say before we begin, I'm afraid there is a big announcement which you will see in the news later today that I have to leave for. So I'm really sorry because I know this is the last one and I would have obviously wanted to be at the whole thing, but there's something I can't miss today. So I'm having to leave probably around 11 o'clock and I'll hand over to Piers to share from that point. So yeah, sincere apologies for that, but it has been a pleasure working with you all and I look forward to working with you all going forward. The focus for today is on how we are working together as partners to improve outcomes and reduce health inequalities, particularly for children and young people. And we're delighted to be joined by a range of presenters from across the system, and even more importantly, some young people who I understand are missing a maths test. That's okay. They're very enthusiastic about the meeting and would like it to carry on for as long as humanly possible. So feel free to talk at length. As a result of the young people being in the room, the maturity level has gone up significantly. So thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Okay, on to item number 2, which is declarations of interest. Anybody got any declarations of interest they want to share? Yes. Sorry,
not on a declaration of interest, but I need to leave for the same thing that you've got to leave. I was leaving.
We'll go there together. In secret. All right, wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 3, minutes of the meeting. So we will be meeting the minutes of the meeting held in public on the 22nd of January. Any changes? No. Action log, nothing to flag. Actions are updated within the log. Item number 4, questions from the public. We have one question, I believe, from the public, which I think Andy Ashcroft is going to read and respond to.
That is right. So it's a question on the Federated Data Platform. I know colleagues will have been in a number of meetings where this will have been discussed previously because most boards have received those questions. So the context will be added to our website. But if I take the 3 questions in turn. So firstly, and these are from Dr. Winona Martel Brown. So firstly, can the ICP provide an update on progress of the use of the FDP? Secondly, given its adoption is not mandatory, did the board agree it's appropriate to recommend a pause on the current plans? And thirdly, could a meeting be arranged with colleagues in the NHS to discuss this? The position is that obviously we're aware of concerns that have been raised locally around the Federated Data Platform. NHS England is the controller for the separate national FDP in this instance, and it's used for operational planning and oversight. NHS South Yorkshire owns and maintains its own platform in addition to the FDP, and this platform is used to undertake analysis of data to support commissioning the evolution of services for patients. Much more information has been made available on NHS South Yorkshire's website regarding the FDP, so colleagues will be able to access that there. So we will publish the full context of the question and the response on our website, but I think most colleagues will have known the position and seen some of the responses in the past.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, we'll get on to item number 5, the substantive item. This is a focus on children and young people. This is a multifaceted section, and there are going to be a number of presenters. Nicola Ennis, Programme Director for Children and Young People's Alliance, will lead us through and introduce colleagues where appropriate. Nicola will guide people through the timings. Board members have even provided all the supplementary agenda to guide you through this item. And it's going to include speakers, videos, questions posed to the board. So with no further ado, I will hand over to Nicola, who will take us through the meeting until around 11 o'clock, if that's okay.
Yeah, and then Oliver will take the break at 11 because Oliver's leaving and we will start again at 15. No, right.
Yeah, of course, that's fine. I wasn't sure if it was in.
No, we're not throwing you out. You're going to speak very quickly. Yeah.
I'm telling you, I can.
The maths test is looming.
Thank you, Chair. So good morning, everybody, and thank you, as always, for your continued commitment to ensuring that children and young people remain priority in South Yorkshire. The chair has let you know that this will be 90 minutes where there's lots of moving parts on the agenda. And so before I begin, I just want to acknowledge something that came through strongly in the planning feedback for this session, which is the item's big, it's ambitious, it's wide-ranging, and it contains a lot. So I stick to time. So when I was thinking about that, I reflected and I found myself looking back at sort of genuine life and death moments in my career. So when I was a student nurse and I was the first person to have to go to resuscitate someone and call for help. Or when I worked in a rehab unit for women and children and an angry partner rocked up at night, started throwing bricks at the window. Or when we had to close down a detox unit because it was really volatile. And all of that I needed to remind myself, and that is not today. So today, there are moving parts that might not run exactly to plan, but I can promise you this, that the purpose of this session is really, really clear. So across South Yorkshire, there is a huge amount of work taking place that's really great and supports children, young people and families. We know that this is working, we know it's making a difference, but it's really difficult at times to evidence that. And so we are here to say that we have a bigger ambition and we want to be more strategic, more aligned. We want to strengthen our partnerships to maximise and guarantee an impact for children that will grow up healthier. So that's the aim of the session today. So we'll showcase some initiatives on early years, education, neighbourhood health models and youth leadership. And noting this is only a snapshot, there's so much more. Each presentation includes a specific question for the board and dedicated discussion time is built into the agenda. So just hold on to the questions, think about certain things you may want to respond to, there'll be time to do that. All today's contributions align with wider strategies, including your 10-year health plan, Health is Wealth, and South Yorkshire's integrated care strategy. And we will hear the voices of parents, young people, and professionals throughout the presentations. So as I've already mentioned, in South Yorkshire, we believe there is a strong foundation for a more unified, more strategic system approach for improving the health and well-being of children and young people across South Yorkshire. So I'm now going to hand over to Ruth and Brianna, co-chairs of the Children and Young People's Alliance Strategic Board, who are going to go into more detail about why we believe this is important. So they will take you through the journey from our IC board request, dating back to talk about the strategic development that we wanted to take, that was in January 2025, the emerging system ambition, and something else which I cannot find on my notes. 1 second, where it's gone all, but anyway, it doesn't matter. They're the main things. They are the main things. So thank you, Ruth and Leanne.
Perfect. We're in it together. Morning, everyone. I'm Ruth Brown. I'm Chief Executive at Sheffield Children's and the lead Chief Executive for the CYP Alliance. And
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joanna Nelson. I'm the Executive Director for Children, Young People and Families. Almost forgot who I was. In Doncaster, and I'm also the chair for the South Yorkshire DCA's group.
Thank you. So I've got a few slides to talk through, and by way of introduction, I think it was interesting. The three of us found ourselves, if I hope you don't mind sharing this, in a huddle in the toilet, talking about today in advance of this morning. And I was reflecting on, as I woke up this morning, thinking, actually, I feel a bit nervous. And I think, you know, all of us are used to presenting in many different spheres, and I think the reason why you perhaps feel that kind of energy this morning is because this is a big deal. I was in a meeting last week talking to different colleagues about what we're going to talk about a bit today and some of the showcase and everything, and one of the questions from somebody around the room was, that's all great, but what about adults? Now, if every time people thought about adult provision and health in its widest sense, they thought about what about children, we would be in a really different position. So the slides that we want to sort of just talk through today really, I hope, come across with the ambition that we have. Within South Yorkshire, we're ready as children, young people, as leaders, in taking this forward to its next level. And it feels really important. So I hope you find today brilliant. A huge thanks to Nicola for all that you've done in getting us to this point, and of course to everybody who's contributing as well. So thank you. I don't know who's navigating slides, but on the next slide, thank you. So you've got a paper in your pack, which is the result of collaboration over many months. Nicola and Paul have authored this, but we have spoken to many different people about what is the direction for children and young people. This first slide is just a kind of a reminder of the context and that we are currently working within. And I think we all know how uncertain, how complex, how fast-paced it is to be working in our system at the moment. Many of us are working not just within our health services or in our silos, but across system work. And our current context really is summarised here in terms of we know that we continue to be fragmented. There are lots of policies which are great that are coming out for children, young people or youth strategies. They're different in education, in health, in local authorities, or many other areas as well. And in South Yorkshire at the moment, we don't have a unified approach to how we're looking at all of those different strategies. And this isn't about saying we need a single strategy. It's about saying there's an opportunity for us to come together to align and collaborate much further. We've got an amazing foundation to build on, some of which you'll hear about today. We've got brilliant place-based neighbourhood working, but there are some things that would benefit at South Yorkshire perspective. And we believe that having a collaborative cross-system model will really help improve our outcomes with different strategic commissioning, that we can have further devolved responsibility, but ultimately about aligning our policies and having a much more powerful impact across our system work. Thank you. On the next slide. So we believe a case for change, which is articulated in the paper that you've got in your packs today. Children and young people continue to be some of the population that are facing the most poorest and unequal health opportunities. We continue to know that. We have got rising needs in mental health and in all of our local authority provision and in education, and that fragmentation will only continue to duplicate that if we don't do something more. And the opportunity is why I come back to the kind of sense of feeling a bit nervous, really, because we know that we have a system that's in change at the moment. We have very strong, good leadership in South Yorkshire for children and young people. Now is the time for us to be really thinking about how do we pull all of those different aspects together and have a stronger voice in our policy. Do you want to just add?
Yeah. So thank you very much, Ruth. So I feel like the stars are aligning for us all in relation to the ambitions that we have, the things that we need to achieve through our local and national policies. And if I give you a flavour, over the last 8 to 9 months, we have seen the biggest transformation policy coming through for children, young people and families that we will see in a generation. It is significant and it is transformation across all areas of children's services, education, health and social care. You will most probably be familiar with the Families First Partnership Programme. That is kind of the thing that is going to transform children's social care. However, alongside that sits the Best Start for Life, the youth strategy, and so it continues. And just this morning, I was reading the latest publication from the government around the National Framework for Children's Social Care. And within there, it talks about the ambition around early intervention, integrated working, supporting children across the pathway of care, whether it's in education, health, or children's social care. It talks about 4 principles, about co-production, voice, the things that you would expect. Then you come into the 4 outcomes, and it's about early intervention, it's about supporting children all along the pathway. But the interesting thing was, it talks about 3 enablers, and the first enabler on there talks about multi-agency, multi-professional support for children, young people and families. The second one is around the leaders in the system and how the leaders enables the context for people to work within. And I think that fits 100% with what we are talking about today. Children's social care can't function without good health provision. Education cannot function without good health provision, whether it is supporting a child with autism or supporting a child living in poverty. Across the system, we need to work together. So this is why this is really important, and us coming together as a group of leaders across South Yorkshire is super important.
Thanks, Brianna. So the paper starts to articulate what our ambition and action is. And we believe that we want to strengthen even further. So there's a lot of work that happens at grassroots level, lots of projects, lots of things that we've done across children, young people, so in all parts of our system. But we believe now is the time for us to be stepping that up more strategically and thinking about how are we coming together. So our ambition is to strengthen the coordination across South Yorkshire. We know that we can do more in health to help support local authority and education within that. But there's also an ambition about how we bring together multi-sector to consider what's next. So as I say, the action we've taken over the last 18 months or so has been about building and getting to this point of where we want to get to. So thank you. Our last slide then is just the kind of ask of the partnership today, acknowledging it's the last meeting in its current form, and we'll be moving on to the next thing. But we, as part of the paper that you've got, we are proposing within that we should be at a point now where we're creating a South Yorkshire Children Young People's Partnership Board, that we come together as senior leaders in thinking about how do we coordinate, take collective action on all the different policies that are out there. We are asking for your support in that. It would be great if you could identify other senior leaders to join myself and Rihanna and others in driving this forward. We've seen obviously that there's a paper later on the agenda today about the South Yorkshire Partnership Health Board. Now this could be an aspect of that board or a fit within it somehow. I don't know what the alignment might be, but there is an opportunity there in terms of children, young people, really going forward faster in what we could do in this policy space as well. We'll come back to that ask at the end when we've heard from all of our presentations and everybody, and we've got time for discussion. But yeah, I just want to kind of leave you with that thought in thinking about how do we strategically come together now as our system. Thank you. Anything you want to add? Thank you. Back to Nicola. Thank you.
I was just thinking actually if, Chair, if this is okay with you, because you are leaving 11 and some other members, it might be useful to just take some feedback on the board support now rather than at the end.
That'd be great.
And then to hear everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I should open that up to the floor then, if people have got any responses to the asks on the screen.
Very, very happy to support this. I chair the Adult Health and Social Care Policy Committee, and I'm forever saying we need to make the linkage because it's, if we're talking about early intervention prevention, everything that we face in terms of adults, is stuff that we can address early on. And I think it's so important for anything to really start as soon as possible. So this, thank you very much for your work. It sounds like a good thing to do, and it makes sense to have that kind of South Yorkshire geography rather than doing separate. It's really important when we get to that point who are the right people and representation. It'd be amazing if we have some leaders in there. It's great that we've got some young people here, but then we can grab children often not in the room with us. And I know that there are constraints with that, but that kind of lived experience is so important. So thank you.
Thanks. Ditto to what Councillor Identio said. There's something about sort of the South Yorkshire stuff being programmatic delivery stuff versus policy and strategy oriented, and sort of is the strategy along a bucket list of policies, or is it a hard set of tests, aka future generations type of space? Wales is obviously light years ahead of us. Yes to partnership board. I know I'm going to get leaned on to be it. The only constraint is time, capacity, what level of seniority, all that kind of stuff. And for those that whose primary primary geography is place-based, there's a sort of a limit to serving geography. There's no easy answer to that one, but yes, with those caveats.
Steve.
I mean, this is brilliant, isn't it? And I've sort of seen, I've seen this work manifest itself over the last 3.5 years, and it just gets better and better. But it's reached a sort of like, I'm feeling nervous now, just thinking about it.
That's because it's
sort of like
exciting.
culmination, hasn't it, in terms of the thinking that's around. So we couldn't have had this conversation 3.5 years ago in my mind's eye in terms of the sort of like compelling nature of what you just sort of like articulated in terms of where we go next. So sort of like in inverted commas, evil that needs to overcome is got to be done through the recommendations that I sort of see in this on this slide, really. Because you don't, in the way that Rihanna's just described, in the way that's articulated of the national policy, which comes around a little bit. You can't do this unless you develop these sort of like strategic, collaborative leadership models, and we haven't got space for doing that at the moment, and it's to the detriment of children and young people across South Yorkshire. So that's absolutely the right place to be, and then the ability that sits underneath that, in terms of being able to bring forward, and the opportunity exists. Strategic commissioning functions that joins this stuff together meaningfully, but actually hardwires it. So it's not just a meaningful conversation. It's got something that sits behind that starts to direct investment and intent. And then just picking up Greg's point, yeah, I nominate Greg to the board, obviously. It's got to change the way we think about stuff, doesn't it? The way we do stuff. So this space suffers so much from silo-based transactional programmatic models, which actually measure widgets and don't actually sort of measure outcomes for the child and the family, does it? And it actually needs to sort of flip that over. And I have been in so many rooms in my career which have been deemed to be multi-agency, but are actually just trying to work out whether they actually are the family is bad enough to sort of meet the threshold to get the service, and invariably we don't. So we just keep meeting until they do get outcomes do get worse, and then they do get service. So the ability to sort of like change that model around in the way that you're trying to articulate seems to me to be massively important. So absolutely support what you're trying to do.
I think you've got Piers, and then there's any I'll come in unless anybody else wants to.
Firstly, happy to support it from the ICB. For me, there are two real challenges. One is that we want to work with you. What does strategic commissioning mean for children's services? What are the kind of 3 or 4 issues we should be tackling in strategic commissioning? And that's it's important. I have to do that in a number of areas, but to have a group where we sit down and say, what change can we make through strategic commissioning that would make a difference? I think would be really valuable. So absolutely supportive. The second issue, and it resonates with Angela, the challenge we always have here in South Yorkshire is the balance between place, which is local authority based, rightly so, and South Yorkshire regional basis. First of all, we all recognise we won't always get that right, and that's okay. But we do need to think about what are the things that we do on a South Yorkshire footprint that will make the difference on using my narrow example of strategic commissioning, and what are the things that are going to be left to Sheffield, Doncaster, Barnsley and Rotherham. Now, we won't always get that right, and as long as we will, I think that's fine, but it is constantly a challenge for us, and we just, the best thing is to be open about that all the time. And sometimes we'll say, actually, we should have left that to play. That's okay. But I think it's important that we all recognise that, because from where I sit as an ICB chair, I constantly see that playing out on lots of issues. So we just need to work at that. But in principle, absolutely right. Having the ICB supported, actually, I think you could do some really good work with us on that. What does strategic commissioning mean for kids' services? I don't know. I want other people to help us. So up for that.
In terms to say it's a terrible idea just to drag out the meeting. If everybody agrees, it's just going to go too quickly. But I do think it's a brilliant idea.
Kill me off as well.
really happy to support. And if it's not overstepping, if I can already suggest, I mean, from our perspective at the MCA, yeah, beds for babies, Every Child a Reader, the free travel pilot in Barnsley and soon to be in Sheffield, the VRU and the knife crime epidemic that we're facing are all issues that I would love you to sort of take on, to help us explore, bring together partners to address and hopefully support some of the interventions that we're putting in place. You know, the idea of, for instance, free travel across South Yorkshire next year is going to be something that I'm going to be pushing quite hard over the next 12 months. And I'd love to have you guys on board to help me think through the implications, the opportunity, and how we might do that in the most effective way possible. So it seems to be like a brilliant space for us all to be involved in, and from the MCA's perspective and the MES perspective, really keen to support. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. I'll just make one comment in response to that. Brilliant. Really, thank you so much for everyone's support. It's amazing. And we want to get to a point where we launch the kind of partnership and board at our summit, which will be at the beginning of July. And that is about Year of the Child and how we amplify all of those things you described and others. And I think when we get to thinking about what is our future play system and working relationships, the roles of providers can be key in that. So, you know, in terms of me as a system leader, really passionate about how we're coming together to convene people in these spaces. So anything that I think we can do together where we're transcending neighbourhood, place and South Yorkshire is so important. So thank you for your support.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody. And so, I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, and I'm going to pass the nervous stick over to you, Leslie.
Yes.
But as many of you will know, sort of working alongside South Yorkshire Health Champions has been integral to this journey. So young people have been weaved through all of it, and they've supported us to get to this stage. People who attended the ICP meeting in June last year will remember that the Health Champions were there. They launched their manifesto, which was created by young people across Barnsley, Doncaster, Rotherham and Sheffield. The manifesto sets out their priorities for fairer, healthier South Yorkshire. It amplifies youth voice, it tackles the root cause of health inequalities, and it calls for services that genuinely listen, include and empower young people. And so it's a great privilege to be able to invite Leslie Pollard, Managing Director for Children and Young People's Empowerment Project, known as ChiliPEP, to share reflections from the South Yorkshire Health Champions using the slides that the Health Champions created themselves. This is the messages they wanted to share here today, which highlights their progress on the key themes so far. So,
So I'm just like 10 young people crammed into this space because they didn't come today. But we did ask them to just think about what were the kind of main highlights for them over the last year or so. If you don't know who the Health Champions are, they're a group of young people from the whole of South Yorkshire. We've been working with them for the last couple of years, and their whole purpose really is to kind of try and be the voice for young people focused around health issues. And they've done huge amounts of work working on different projects and different ideas, and thinking about what their priorities are. Everything they do kind of fits under two themes. One is around health inequalities, and that's like the key thing for them about how do we address health inequalities in South Yorkshire. And the other key theme that's really emerged over the last kind of 6 months, maybe year, is around poverty and the impact of poverty and health inequalities on young people's lives. And that's kind of across the whole of South Yorkshire. So the summit that we're doing in July will have those kind of key themes. So these are just, can we move to the next slide, please? Sorry. So these are just some examples of the different kinds of projects that the young people have been working on. And I think what they kind of demonstrate is how having the voice of young people embedded into work and actually kind of involving them in developing ideas and developing services really makes those services much more young people accessible, work for young people better. So the first one is the example of the text crisis line, which is a South Yorkshire text crisis line around mental health support. They developed what they thought that should look like, how it should work. They gave it a great name, which is AO, very Yorkshire. They're very Yorkshire focused, these kids. So I'm allowed to say kids actually. And so that's just kind of an example really of one piece of work that was South Yorkshire wide, which was really about improving that support to young people around their mental health when they are kind of in crisis. and everything they do fits under their manifesto. And I think the big ask for them, if they were here, would be about, you know, how does their manifesto fit into the strategic development of that board that we're talking about? And how do we kind of cross-reference what their priorities are against what that board decides is the priorities? And how do they engage with that board as well? What's their kind of role? Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is another example of a place-based piece of work that they did around looking at how accessible Barnsley A&E Hospital is. But what's really good about this is that the tool that they use, the Your Welcome assessment tool, which you might have heard about, it's just a really great way of young people being able to act as kind of young inspectors, where they can go in, they can look at a service, they can assess it against some standards that have been established kind of nationally about what the expectation for young people should be and what standards for young people should be when they access a service. So they can go in, they can assess a service against those standards, and they can kind of give that feedback to the service. So they've done it with CAMS across Sheffield, they've done it with CAMS in Barnsley, they've done it with A&E in Barnsley, they've done it with a range of different services, and it's just a really great way of kind of collaboratively and it's not about going in and saying what everything that's wrong, it's about saying what's working really well and what could be improved. So that was, so, and again, that fits with their manifesto. And they were particularly looking at things around neurodiversity, access, you know, how friendly that space was for people with neurodiversity, as well as just how kind of well it works for young people. Because even though it's adult services, we work with young people up to 25. So it was, you know, we've done it with children's services before, children's A&E, now we're doing it with adults. Next slide, please. One of the, and then this is a national example. So I've kind of given a regional, we've given a regional, a local, place-based, and a national example. So the young people have been doing quite a bit of work around looking at poverty and the impact of poverty on health. And so that culminated in them going down to Parliament just before Christmas to be around the table talking to ministers about the child poverty strategy that was about to be launched. And this was kind of the last opportunity for young people to really influence that strategy before it was launched on a national basis. And that was really great because they were able to talk about their own lived experience of what poverty really means to them and you know, what they've experienced. And also for them to go to Parliament and see democracy in action, which is a really fantastic opportunity for young people because it's so distant. I'm right on to, you know, just that chance to just physically be in that building and see it happening. You know, it's an incredible kind of experience for young people to be able to touch that and you know.
I was just thinking, I hope Parliament did themselves justice with all that.
Yeah, no, I think they were very welcoming. They gave them lots of nice food and you know, made it really nice for them. And again, this really links to lots of different aspects on the manifesto. The kind of the thing about how poverty and health kind of link together. Next slide, please. And then another piece of work they did, and this kind of this demonstrates them working with other parts of the system rather than just the health system. This was the young people working with the police and looking at hate crime. And this was a really great piece of work because it was really focused on kind of inequalities and discrimination and how those things, discrimination, inequalities, and poverty, are all kind of linked together. So this was where they developed some materials, some resources to kind of educate and make people more aware around what to do around hate crime. There was a lot of focus around LGBTQ young people in this, and they were really engaged. We've got a separate group of young people who also supported with this. And they've developed some great resources. What they'd like to do now is for those resources to be kind of spread more across South Yorkshire. They're currently more focused in Barnsley. But I think what happens with the young commissioners is they do really great pieces of work, and then it's looking at how to scale that up. But now does that perhaps, how can we replicate that? Thinking about transport, it's not on here, but they've just done a really great piece of work in Barnsley train station where they've done, there's a whole kind of covered walkway, and it's got lots and lots of images and QR codes where people can click onto mental health support services in Barnsley for young people and nationally, and they've become station adopters. So they've adopted Barnsley Station, And what they'd like to do now is adopt all the other 4 stations in South Yorkshire, so that wherever a young person travels by train or tram, they can access and find information about mental health support. So that's, I'm just slotting that in, even though it's not in slides, because it's a great piece of work. Next slide, please. And this is what they're hoping to do next. Great picture of you there, Oliver, in there, just that you come and have your meeting at our building last year, which was great, and that was where the young people presented the manifesto. And their aim really is to kind of really embed that manifesto now and look at how we take that forward over the next couple of years. We're developing the health champions now and trying to build that group more. We have got representation from across South Yorkshire, but we need to build that up more now, get more young people involved. Next slide. And this is their question for the board. I've kept it in 10 minutes. Have I done it? Have I done it? So that's the question for you. What plans do you have for the rest of this year that will involve the voices of young people?
We've got that on the slide later on, so we can come back to that. I'm just going to shift the agenda around again, even though I planned this within an inch of its life. I'm now like trying to dial it back. So I think if it's okay, it's Jude. And we have Joshua, Isa, Logan and Raphael with us this morning. We will bring this agenda item forward. I had planned it through the years, just saying. So we're going to go to the end first and come back. But just to know that they're going to cut it off, it's fine. So your interview treat, just so you know, these students are going to share an exciting new health technology that they've invented. Thanks, guys. Before you do, Ruth and Jude will introduce a little bit about Sheffield Children's 150th year and the National Centre for Child Health Technology, and then pass on to students to share all their exciting work with us. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. So while I think you're going to move up to the top, aren't you?
We're going to move, we're not leaving early.
So just while we get the slides up and students are gathering, so I'm sort of talking to you now as Chief Executive of Sheffield Children's, and we provide lots of care, physical and mental health care across the region, both in acute and community, from health visiting in Sheffield right through to really highly specialist provision. And there's a slide with a photo on, which we might get to, that has, you have to keep going. I think it's, oh right, it's okay, just wing through them all, it's fine. There's a photo that you'll see in some of the slides that is a photo of our building when we were first founded in 1867. A doctor, a solicitor and an architect founded Sheffield Children's for children or families who couldn't afford it. And what's amazing is that the project that Jude and the students will talk to you about is our 150th moon landing, in terms of how we are going to celebrate how we will take Sheffield Children's into our next 150 years. This is the building that we were in where we saw 29 patients in our first year. Fast forward to last year, 500,000 contacts with different patients from all over. So huge thanks to the Mayoral Authority and everybody else who has helped us to get to fund the scheme that Jude's going to talk about, but really welcome everybody getting engaged in this. And over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Privilege, and we're not nervous, so we're all right. Nothing to be nervous about. So I wanted to, for many of you, be aware of the National Centre for Child Health Technology. We're going to open it this year, which is fantastic, but I wanted to remind you a bit of some of the vision, some of the why that we're doing that. And then secondly, and perhaps more importantly, want to share some of the work we've done through our Young Inventors programme this year, of which we don't need a building to do some of this work. It'll get so much better when we have got our building, because we'll have really specialist facilities to do it in. But there's some really exciting things that are coming through. So some of our young people that have been designing and creating and really understanding what the problems that they face within health and within healthcare, and designing some technology solutions and support through that, and they're amazing. So in terms of giving an overview, this is our year that we'll open the National Centre for Child Health Technology, a space that's going to design, create, test child healthcare technologies, amazing different types of spaces. And I've got a short video that we'll show, which gives a little bit of a reminder for why we're doing it. Here we go. And the for children with children bit, it's not a strap line. Absolutely mean it. This is the evidence of it, what we mean. And industry, when they talk to us, they describe this as the global first, and it's a global first for us here in South Yorkshire. And it's an amazing privilege to be able to help to bring it to life. It'll be a huge, huge opportunity that we can help transform children's health through technology. And I think it'll help us in our aim to become the healthiest region in the country. And key for us is the creation of technology that absolutely works for children, not scaled down adult technology that we think might work for children. And then crucially, what it means for us as a region in terms of adoption of technology. It's great to have this amazing engine room that creates new technology, but not if we don't put it into use. So that's our challenge, I think, for us, is how do we make the most of that? So within our health systems, how do we adopt technology readily, quickly, safely? But then also a lot of the technologies that we'll start to talk about now aren't things that happen in a health setting. They're things that happen through a child's whole life. So it could be in their home, it could be when they're at school, it could be when they're out having fun. So there's a challenge on all of us, I think, to think about how do we do this and how do we do it well. And young people have been helping us all the way through this programme. So some of the images on the screen, you can see young people have been helping us design space, thinking about how, with the furniture, with the layout. It's a busy, exciting building. How does that work for children with neurodiversity who are attending for their care appointment and looking for a quieter, more discreet route through to their appointment? And also as services move across the city, what are the questions that are young people wanting to be us to answer, and how do we reassure them around the care that they're going to receive as part of that? And then as we look towards then the next part, So you people, you're on this photo as well, you know, you're on the screen, and that. There you go. Young people again have been working with industry partners to help them to develop their health tech projects. So when we ran an accelerator program and we brought companies that were working on products specifically for children's health from the UK, but also from Europe, they came to Sheffield every week for 3 months to develop their products. And what was really important, I think made it really different to lots of other accelerators that you might go on, is the fact that young people were part of that and they were giving feedback on the products, feedback on some of the pictures, and some of these amazing development opportunities to stand in front of a room of 70 people, investors, leaders, and to be able to present as part of that program. So that's that. We're trying to talk about kind of our Young Inventors program. There's 2 parts to it that we've done. The first part has been with primary aged children, and that has been, we've worked in the east of Sheffield with 3,000 primary school children, with assemblies and workshops with a question to invent something to make you feel better when you're falling. And we also ran a version of this competition online, which opened it up wider across the region, nationally. And then I found out we had responses in from 5 continents, so we've kind of gone global with it. So maybe we need to change our name. But some of those ideas now are being selected and they're being built and prototyped in a workshop, and they're going to be in the entrance of the National Centre for Child Health Technology when we open it. And that's really important to us because this isn't about adults creating technology for children. This is about showcasing some of the ideas that are there. And how do we spark some imagination in 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds to think about the opportunities that can come for some of that. So our Young Inventors program really is helping young people to develop technology solutions to challenges that they are facing themselves, what's really important to them. It builds their skills. So when we're thinking about the workforce of the future, what are the skills that we need in our region? This is part of that, and I think it's a huge opportunity for us. And it ensures that we have young person voice at every stage. It's not just at the very end saying in red or blue. It's about really understanding, are we creating the right technologies? Do they work? And where are they? So in terms of the second programme we're running, our Young Inventors programme, this is the one we want to talk about today. So this is to develop a new product that's especially designed to help children in 3 particular areas. So we focused on mental health, autism and ADHD, and long-term conditions. And this was a national competition that we ran. These students that I'll talk in a moment are part of the Baker Deering Education Trust. So the 44, soon to be 45 university technical colleges, UTCs across the country. Got 2 in Sheffield, 1 in Doncaster, soon to be a 2nd in Doncaster. And they worked in multidisciplinary teams. It was heartening listening to some of their stories of young people that their paths haven't crossed in their school time. They got put together into a project team, and they become best of friends through this work because they brought different skills to it. They had 16 hours to work on these projects, and each UTC ran the competition, and then they were able to bring a finalist from each of their colleges to Sheffield for the final across 2 age groups, so year 10 and then within year 12. So what I wanted to be able to share today is a little bit about what our programme looks like, and then hear about some of those ideas. So the final bit that I'll just walk you through, for those that have got good eyes, it describes the programme. I'm kind of in a nutshell in terms of what we did. And so for the young people, they'll tell their story. They researched this. What does it mean for these challenges? And use personal stories, siblings, those of friends. They did some wider research, what was already existing in the market, and then started to create prototypes and working examples of what it could look like. And in some cases, business models. I think some of the best business cases I might have seen in the last couple of years in terms of how we can make these commercially viable. So, how are we doing for time? Halfway? Great. So we've got with us Joshua, Isa, Logan, and Raphael from the University Technical College, UTC, and the Olympic Legacy Park. And Joshua and Raphael, you're just going to give us a summary of your project and the proposal you picked. Would you like to start? Logan.
All right. Hi everyone, I'm Raphael. I hope you're doing well. So basically, we built an autism website which is children friendly. And it's easy interactive. Our aim was to raise awareness and provide correct resources for parents and children to use so that they can deal better with autism. So we implemented advancing tech such as AI chatbot, and games to make it he's interacting and obviously to advocate the use of advancing technologies. So, well, this idea came from one of our team members. He had a relative who has autism. I'm pretty sure he told us stories about how his aunties and his uncles struggled to deal with him because they didn't know what to do. So our aim is obviously for other kids who struggle the same and for other adults, so they can deal better with them. Because we believe they do not get the right attention and attention that they deserve. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Joshua, do you want to describe it?
So I was looking with my team at long-term condition of diabetes. This came from the position of myself. I've got a mother who's suffered with condition since she was young, so I've seen a lot of the things that go along with the condition. So I was looking at a case of a lot of young children aren't very aware of what it all means. They're given a number and they're told it needs to remain in this sort of region. And I wanted to change that. And I discussed it with my team and we looked at gamification, turning it into something that's fun and interactive that would sort of generate a link between keeping their sugars in range and positive fun engagement. So even when they stop requiring a gamified solution, those habits would still be in place, even long after, hopefully, they stopped using that product.
Thank you both. And Logan and I said, so our next question then, so I wonder what you learned from taking part in this challenge.
So we reached a point in our project when the deadline was only a few days away and half the work wasn't done. Very related. Only at that point did I realise that I've been assigned tasks wrong the entire time. So overall, this really shows how important task delegation and time management is, especially when you're dealing a project that's only like 16 hours, like you said. So I found out the hard way, but I also found out that you should assign tasks based on the individual to ensure they get the task completed effectively and efficiently.
Thank you.
So very similar to Ether, we had a lot of issues regarding task management where we were getting further and further into the project and nothing was getting done. And not only did this come from delegating tasks incorrectly and not realising what, but it also came from we weren't entirely sure what the person was supposed to do. We didn't know what tasks would be best suited to each person. And even within that, once we finally delegated those tasks, they weren't very well specified. They were very general, broad tasks that our team struggled to understand and realise into actual concepts because they barely understood what they were supposed to do themselves. We learned through the project that we really needed to be more open in communicating with each other about what we didn't know about the project and what tasks were really unclear and the things that we didn't know what we were doing so that we could realise things much simpler in a much shorter time frame without getting to the point of the deadline being only a few weeks away and nothing was being done because we just didn't know what we were supposed to be doing.
That's an amazing insight you've got for that. Thank you. And then thinking about your skills that you learned through this process, and I wonder how that might help prepare you for when you move into the workforce.
Well, time management was really important, yeah. So, and assigning each and obviously communication with your partners, your team members, I think that's really important. And I feel like in actual work industries that can really translate really well. So now we've got experience and obviously we'll just help develop our skills. So yeah, I think that would be really exciting.
So again, similar again, the teamwork and communication efforts I think would be really beneficial. But another thing that we developed while looking at is the ability to brainstorm and going through a number of ideas and realizing that at that phase, there isn't really such thing as a bad idea. And every idea should be explored and looked into in a number of different ways before we try and make a decision on where we're actually going to go.
Thank you. And then we started to talk this morning about a number of projects that help young people and particularly in our context, thinking about health tech solutions. Why would you think it's important for young people to be involved in projects like this?
It's important because projects like this can help develop the skills that they need in a workplace and in general for communities and projects, and it also helps them to experience those environments that maybe they couldn't experience in school.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, given their opinion, because they're the ones that are actually experiencing and maybe there's there's not really a solution to those. So if when they give their opinion, people who actually are working to that solution understand better what they need to work on. So I think that's why it's really important why children should contribute.
Thank you. The questions I prepared, I'm going to put these guys on the spot. Does anyone else want to kind of offer a question or reflection? Yes.
I was wondering whether the issue of gender came up, because in the video it said most technology is developed for adults, but actually it's developed for male adults. And it's the same with medical research. We know, I know as a woman, the most drugs are developed, and tested on men rather than women. And, and I wonder whether that has come up as an issue when you were doing your brainstorming, how, boys and girls, male and female would benefit from certain things, but not others.
So in our region in particular, it didn't come up directly, and I feel like it really, really should have. But just looking at when I was at the final going around the other UTCs and their projects, I could see there were a number of solutions there that issue was really looked into, and it was clear that they'd really tried to understand the differences and really focus on that.
Yeah. I just wondered if it made you think differently at all about kind of what you want to do next, and gave you any insight or ideas about kind of where you might take your lives, your careers, or anything.
It really exposed us to a wide range of new skills, new technologies, new ideas that we wouldn't have thought before. Because when we came and looked at the health tech project previously, before actually looking into how we're supposed to achieve this, it was more of a broad generalization of topics, rather than, each topic is its own thing, needs to be looked into and treated like every other topic with the same amount of importance. So I feel like you need to, especially what I gained from the project, we need to look into each thing individually and take it as its own thing, and not generalize things, like what I've noticed was quite prevalent beforehand.
Just to take off that as well, I think it also, because it was such interdisciplinary, particularly within our UTC, because we're both computing and health, where before I started the project, and I think it's the same for a lot of members of my team, we are strictly computer scientists. We aren't exposed to the wide range of opportunities that can go into that field. A lot of them look into a lot of time as games development is one of the most popular ones, and it seems that we zero in our focus a lot sooner than we should. And being introduced to this project and having to look into it from within another side of specialism at our school, it really opened the horizon to, well, I'm a computer scientist, yes, but what other industries can I work in with this skill set?
Thank you. I hope that kind of gave you a little bit of an insight into what maybe the round of applause. How much of a big deal it is to be able to stand in front of a group of people like this and speak so eloquently, and I wonder if I could have done when I was younger. So there's a question in the pack, but if I was to paraphrase it, what we've done, I think, has been really, really impactful. We're really thankful that our charity supported us to allow us to be able to put this event on and to be able to bring young people together and to organise some of the practical elements of it. How can we move this from being something that is a top up and an additional thing that we do because we think it's the right thing to do into core business? So it's really normal. And what does that mean for funding, for roles, for being able to reimburse young people for their time and to be able to be part of what we do? That it feels so important to us that we have young people through everything that we do, but we're not always quite set up to naturally be able to say yes to all those ideas.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. So comfort break, 10 minutes. Is that okay with everybody? Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you.
Nicola, can you restart? Are you ready to? Yeah, do you mind?
Sure.
So we've got another 35 minutes of this, 40 minutes of this, then we've got a couple of other agenda items, okay?
Great.
We have lost some people because of the government announcement today, which is
Yeah.
where Oliver and I think Angela have gone. It's my
Yeah.
guess she's at the same place.
Yeah.
Judging by what Oliver said. Nicola, back to you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to move on and hear from Fiona Rigby about a bedtime stories project that's been happening in Sheffield. So Fiona Rigby's Learn Sheffield Improvement Partner. Joining us online, she's been very patient because she actually joined for our slot at 10:45. Who's going to introduce the project, which works closely aligns with the Every Child a Reader programme that South Yorkshire Mayor's Office are working towards. And so, Fiona, thank you very much for joining us. Sorry for keeping you waiting. It'd be really helpful to hear about the why. So why did this project start?
Okay, first of all, it's really disconcerting looking at that enormous image of myself behind you, Nicola. So thank you for that. Brilliant. Okay, so basically the seeds of this project started by chance. Myself and another head teacher in locality B of Sheffield were asked to go and present at a GP conference. We expected about 6 there, and when we got there, there was 202 microphones. That again was disconcerting. But basically, we were there talking about some multidisciplinary work that we were doing in our locality and the difference it was making, having a really strong relational practice with people in health, people in care. As a result of that, 2 GPs locally reached out to us and wanted to talk to us about how we could work together across our GP surgeries and the schools to better meet the needs of children, to overcome some of the barriers that families were having. Those meetings carried on. And we found there were very practical things that we could do, but we wanted to do a little bit more. They also broadened out, so we got people from FIS there, people from the university interested in how we can make better relationships with our families. In Sheffield at the moment, we've got written a SEND manifesto and a SEND strategy. And the basis of that, or an awful lot of that work, is linked to healthy child development. There's some work done by Harry Burns. There's a great YouTube video, actually, if you Google that, Harry Burns, on what causes wellness. And at the heart of the Sheffield SEND strategy is healthy child development. What can we do to cause more children to be well? How can we work on a strength-based model? Thinking about the links between social circumstances and actually molecular events, what can cause us to be unwell? And we know that a chaotic early life can often lead to the inability to manage stress. And so out of that, and because some work had been done in Liverpool, the group came up with the idea of running a bedtime stories project, working in an inclusive way with our families, and even within our locality and the schools that are involved. The families are different. We have very distinct communities, some language barriers and some cultural barriers. And what we wanted to do was to help our families to establish some calm routines before bed, to decrease screen time and to establish more meaningful interactions with their children, more attunement. The group that have been working on it have been really, really supported by some great project management, which has injected some pace into the project. So we've got schools, we've got a group of 5 schools who are running the project. We're working with parents, we're working with FIS workers, we've got support from our health colleagues within that. And what we're trying to do is to build, as I've said, bonding, attunement, more security for those children, routines, and to develop vocabulary and literacy skills. It's happening in our schools with the support of other agencies. The practitioners have got together. They've had some great ideas which they are sharing and replicating work in different schools. But the project has also built in the flexibility to deal with different cultures and different approaches. So, for example, we've got within that an expert storyteller who's working particularly within the Owlerbrook School in Page Hall with the Roma community. looking at so not looking formally at books, but retelling stories from culture. So far, it's had a really positive impact, and there's lots of enthusiasm around it. The workshops have been very well attended, and I think part of that is the multidisciplinary approach, and part of it is really strong relationships within those schools anyway, but those parents are aspirant and they want the best for the children, and lots of them are facing real difficulties with screen time and chaotic life circumstances, I suppose. So that's the project. That's why we did it. That's who we did it. A little bit of how, because that's the project is just starting. And I think that I have an opportunity to ask a question to the board, and that is, you know, how can we use a project like this to link with Every Child a Reader and to widen the reach? And that's it. And I think I did that, Nicola, in less than 5 minutes.
Fiona, that was really helpful. Can I ask you something? Because I think I was aware of the Liverpool project. I'm a Scouser by background. And one of the real challenges they were getting was, how do I get males into this? Because it became a very female dominant thing. We wanted dads to do the reading, and they did stuff with footballers and stuff to try and create a sense of, no, men should be doing the reading and the nighttime reading. Is that an issue? And how are you tackling it?
But to be honest, I can't answer whether that's an issue at the moment. But my experience in that area, working in that area for a very long time, is that yes, it will be. It will be an issue in some communities more than in others. I think the project's in its early stages, and really what we're doing is we're getting our parents to open up about what's currently happening at bedtime and what they might want to change. So we haven't got really to that level, but I imagine you're right, it will be a challenge.
Any other questions for you?
One thing to add, Fiona, as well, isn't it, is that we have a really interested colleague at the University of Sheffield who's supporting us around the evaluation of this as well. So some of that probably will come out of that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so.
Thank you so much, Fiona, for your time.
I'm sorry to keep you waiting, Fiona, but thank you. That was really interesting stuff.
No problem.
And I think the board would love to hear, as it goes further, I think the board would love to hear back, because I think this is really interesting stuff.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, that's great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Fiona.
Bye.
Bye.
On to the.
You go.
Yeah. So, thank you. So Ellen, if we just move on to the MDT slide, please. So yeah, just building on the work that Fiona's been doing. So I'm Paul, a colleague of Nicola's in the CYP Alliance. I've been working, leading some around development of MDTs for children and young people. I just thought I'd start with that data. Some people can read that, but it's in the pack. So I think this is mostly from the Cherish database that Barbara's team developed. And it might be slightly out of date, but the basics, I hope people kind of recognise this. And I guess the reason this is important is these things aren't isolated. So often this is a condensed number of children with lots and lots of problems. And there's a reason those problems are related. So we know if children have long-term conditions like epilepsy, diabetes, they're more likely to miss school, therefore more likely to suffer mental health problems. They might be anxious, might be depressed. And we also know all that picture's skewed by deprivation. I think it says on the slide there about the gap in life expectancy. So this kind of, I guess, it sort of paints a bit of a grim picture in some ways. But I guess what the positive side of it is, there's no shortage of individuals, teams, organisations that are working to address all this. So I guess building on some of the sentiment of all the presentations today, we're looking in South Yorkshire at like, well, what can we do practically that brings together those people in a kind of different and more coordinated way, and provides, I guess, provision that addresses some of these challenges collectively and in a more timely manner, basically. So that's the kind of context for the work. So if you just press the next one, please, Ellen.
Not working.
Okay, so what do we know? So I think there was in the video earlier, it was talking about children, 25% of the population, therefore they consume. We know that children, young people consume kind of health resources, in particular GPs and ED. But we also know, as everyone's talked about, that kind of children's conditions are amenable to a holistic approach. So where something presents as a health problem, that if you've got the right people there, there's an opportunity to kind of address, well, what's underpinning the health problem or what might be contributing to it. So it might be nutrition, housing, mental health support that children need. So the plan for work as part of the shift toward neighbourhood working in general, but kind of alongside it at the same time, is bring together paediatric expertise, GPs, other health professionals to work collectively in communities. So the bit about kind of hospital to community treatment, prevention, use that for general health promotion as well as addressing the presenting problem, which might be continence or respiratory problems or eczema, something like that. Really addressing that, but thinking, well, what might be behind it. Develop learning and relationships across professional groups, and that's really key actually. So, and what I've learned through development of this work is people doing kind of lots of related things that they don't even know about it, even in the same localities, which is interesting. So an opportunity to bring some of that knowledge together for the long term, and then connecting to things like other sectors. So obviously schools, voluntary sector, building on a bit of the work Fiona described a minute ago. And the kind of, what was the national ask? Well, it was for ICBs just to have a go at doing some of this year. We would probably, if you looked across what's happening in South Yorkshire, we're kind of already doing this in different examples, previous examples, like an example of that. So this is not new work. So I think the key for us in South Yorkshire is to find opportunities where there's an advantage for doing things differently, rather than just doing something for the sake of it. It's trying to think, where have we got some opportunities? Where do we know we've got health inequalities and deprivation? Where do we know access to healthcare is poor? Where are the chances to bring together broader health promotion and support children and young people? So we've done some of that work already. So if we just bring up the final bit of the slide. So we've commenced some work in Sheffield. So we've done, over the last year, lots of conversations, stakeholder meetings, trying to find areas of good practice, enthusiasm. So we've developed a couple of kind of multidisciplinary teams, both in Sheffield, with different primary care networks, one specifically around respiratory health in South East Sheffield, and then some work in locality, actually, Burngree, Firth Park area, also in Sheffield, again, where we know deprivation, health inequalities, lack of access, lots of referrals into secondary care, but lots of non-attendances. So it's trying to bring some of that provision into community. Discussions across all places about some of this work at supporting complex care. So really at the other end of it, so at one end it's how do we kind of have general health promotion, at the other end it's where there's really complex children, how can an MDT approach support that? So conversations happening around that. And then the plan through next year to, I guess, really think about embedding this. And I guess that comes back to the bit about how do you strategically commission it. So, you know, you start with where we think there's some ideas and some pilots and tests, and then think about how do you kind of funnel the money to make it work, which I think might be the question on the, I can't remember exactly how worded the question to the board, but it should be on the pack. We get it there, Nicola. It'll be in the slides. Something along the lines of like, so this national guidance came out this week that described the shift towards neighbourhood health, not particularly detailed in terms of financial flows. I think the question for us in South Yorkshire is, like, what can we do in that interim period to get financial models that support this work? And, you know, so it's not kind of done through, you know, people coming together where they think there's an interest. We think about it, actually, we've identified a need and develop services to support properly. So I don't know if that was the time.
It's great, thank you. Really helpful to see the multidisciplinary work and it's really starting, the connections that are building to do this piece of work, and also what Fiona was describing in her locality, and our people are working together to do that. And so I'm going to take you back to the start of the agenda and bring you into the early years space, which also is a bit of partnership working that's taken place. And you're going to see two short videos. Adam Fuller, who's the development manager for children and young people at Yorkshire Sport, and he's going to outline how South Yorkshire Active Start programme supports early years practitioners to use physical activity to strengthen children's health development and school readiness. Second video's just coming. So how lovely to see children at the start of their learning journey, just enjoying spending time doing physical activity and the difference that that makes when they go into school and learn. And we're going to jump into the other end of the age group. So I'm going to move to children who are coming out of school education, but thinking about further education, employment and training. And take you into the Health and Growth Accelerator space. So the space where, as an NHS contribution towards pathways to work, we've been thinking about 16 to 24-year-olds often within categorising that NEET population, so not in employment, training and education, and thinking about their health needs, so thinking about their mental health and what's getting in the way of them managing to engage in those things, or their neurodiversity and the support particularly that they might need to be able to be in that space. And so we've been really privileged to be working alongside different organisations and charities to support this work. And Eski has been one of those that have been in the space thinking about getting alongside young people and saying, how should we communicate with you? What is going to engage you in this space? And learning from that. And the other thing is really hearing from them, really hearing their stories about how difficult it's been in education and then leaving education and trying to get into a space where they want to be able to do something, but they're really struggling to do it. So we developed a peer connectors service, which I know has been mentioned here before. And so you will hear from John, who's the CEO from Eski, just around some of the findings that he's been getting when he's been talking to young people, some of the key themes coming through. He created this figure, by the way, for December, so it talks about not having fun, not knowing about future funding. But we do know there's future funding, so it's all good. So he just touches on that just in case. And the second video is hearing from a young person who was involved in the peer connector work and the difference that that made to him.
Thank you.
It's great to hear from Chris and his experiences, but they're quite sobering as well to think about the struggles that he's experiencing. He is one of many, and it's not that everybody collectively is trying to do something in the space. We absolutely are. What we're trying to say is that there's a lot more that we should be doing, can be doing, and if we do that together in partnership, then we're much more likely to be able to make an impact that's going to be lasting and sustainable. And so that's the kind of the overall message, I would say. I'm just going to take you back to the very beginning of the agenda, where we talked about three main things that we just wanted to share with you today or to get across. So one thing was to see that there is lots of great stuff happening, and this is only a snapshot of some of it. There is way, way more than this. And we do know it's making a difference. You can see that from the young people who presented today on the videos, but we also know that it's very hard to be able to evidence some of that and think about future generations, because everything feels so short term, and before you move on, something else has happened and you're way over here and you stop what you're doing, which is the sustainable stuff that we know that's working. And then we were really putting an ask to the board about saying we can do more. We've got bigger ambition. We're ready to take things to the next step. We want to work closer in partnership with our colleagues across South Yorkshire to then drive forward how we can really tie the threads together with the different strategies, different policies, and then, like Greg was mentioning, start to drive forward some really key pieces of work together. So thank you so much for endorsing that, for listening today to what people have shared, and for the people who've contributed who've not been in the space. Really grateful to them. And we didn't break for discussion points, but I just wondered, Chair, if you wanted any feedback from any of those now, and then I think we're just about 10 minutes.
I'm happy. Anyone, people want to respond to any or all of that? Greg.
Still yes. You haven't put me off yet. So still yes. The thing that changed during the course, which kind of straightens the flag, is one, we've probably underplayed the voices of young people and all of that, so kind of big deal, because that does matter a lot. And just again, statement finding the obvious too, get way beyond health. This is a societal thing, not just a health, etc., etc. And just specifically on Paul's question on what the strategic commissioning in this concept looks like, I wrote down four things. One, there's a sort of test, learn, adapt type of methodology, which is common in public service reform, which is local government parlance, but same applies here, and set a one-way mission to make the mechanics enable the mission set out, and talk openly about choices and trade-offs. Yeah, of course, shifting models has costs and consequences, but so does not shifting. So just talk openly and honestly about that, force people to do the trade-offs. And 3, do the sort of pre-mortem. What could possibly go wrong? Plan for it, talk about it openly. And that may not answer all of the questions, but will certainly, for me, is a partial answer at least to what the strategic commissioning look like in some of these contexts.
Tough. Stephen, and then Kate. Stephen.
So it's been helpful to sort of like hear the introduction, to go through the conversation and hear, and then come back to this point. It's just, it seems to me that it's a reinforcing message that very well designed way through. But what you're left with, what I'm left with, is so some amazing stuff, isn't there, that goes on across South Yorkshire that we can celebrate, but it's not commensurate with the scale of the challenge that we think the counterpoint that Greg just talked about. And there's something missing in our system at the moment to provide that sort of leadership, to provide that disruption, or to provide that sort of innovation, to actually sort of do different things at scale. And it is about system leadership. And there's issue, but a lot of these things are short-term stuff out there as well. So it's about having the sort of collaborative system leadership at the right geographical scale, and then seeing how that translates in terms of the way in which we can change the system conditions. And some of this is like hardwiring. So underneath joint commissioning stuff is about actually both shifting money around a little bit and actually joining money together in a coherent way. Because we all measure our life what we want, don't we? We all measure our little widgets. And the truth is, what our individual perspective money brings is catalysing other resources and other money in this space. Just final point for me, the thing that this partnership must have is constancy of purpose. Because actually we just get pushed around from one place to another by short-term funding. And the ability to just hold the ring on this conversation strategically, and whatever the mechanisms are that sit in that need to be hard and soft, actually, some of the things that are just from this conversation, just screamingly obvious to me.
I really enjoyed that this morning. The energy, the passion, everything that's going, you've completely got my support. I just wanted to say, you kept mentioning about lasting and sustainable, it's linked to the finances as well. And what your providers, I'm assuming, will be voluntary sector. It's making sure what percent of your providers are voluntary sector, how sustainable are they, how much can you ensure that they're going to be there in 2, 3, 4, 5 years? I think that's my biggest question, and it comes around to, I suppose, the funding and how it is shifted around to ensure that provision is there to support your services.
Leslie, you want to respond to that, I think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking my hat off as the kind of showing people's voice kind of role. And kind of responding as a voluntary sector provider ourselves. And I think that, I was thinking as you were talking, that is like one of the key issues. There are some absolutely fantastic initiatives that are often piloted by the voluntary sector because money comes in, it has to be spent really quickly. And so we're kind of approached because we can get it out, we can cut out the bureaucracy, we can get things going. But then you get something going, it just starts to work, it just starts to have an impact, and that money goes. And then something else comes in, you have to respond to that. And for us as organisations, the instability that creates, the constant insecurity for staff, the constant insecurity for us as organisations, if I'm being brutally honest, the expectation that we can do it cheaper, which absolutely undermines our sustainability as organisations in terms of being able to just exist and pay our own for costs. And, we have the same pressures in terms of, the NHS hike and the cost of living increases and the living wage rises and all of that. And so there's that, there is kind of, the voluntary sector are really, really good at delivering a lot of this stuff. But it's just thinking all of that through and how we, hold that.
I said this to him. Oh, sorry.
No. Oh, sorry. So I haven't got a name tag. I'm here deputising for Mike Richmond, David Plotts. I'm a non-exec director at Barnsley Hospital. And I came here with my Barnsley Hospital hat on. However, I'm also vice chair of the Shore Lane Foundation in Barnsley, and we have, it's Barnsley Cricket Club, Barnsley Rugby Club, paddle courts, a squash club. We have a fantastic facility. We do lots with opening doors and local provision. And so the more I've sat here, the more excited I've got about the facilities that we have. And I think Nina spoke about it, and then Kate talked about it as well. And then Leslie, who I know Chili Pep pretty well. It's that funding thing, and we've got fantastic facilities. We do lots of stuff with the community, but it's that consistency that we miss, and it's about bringing I don't know, some way of evaluating what kind of organisations like ours. And there's another one I used to work for in Shire Green, and you know, whereby we need support to evaluate what the services, what the facilities we have. And we've probably got one of the best multi-sport facilities in South Yorkshire up there at Shore Lane. But we need support and help to how do we utilise that better to bring together some of the different things I've seen today. And the kids reading one's fantastic. We've just started a Lego after school Lego club, which has just been way oversubscribed, and getting kids and parents in to come and play together. You talking earlier about someone talking about fathers with the, you know, we're trying to look at how do we, you know, bring fathers together with their kids into the site to help with things like that. And, you know, Barnsley's, you know, got a lot of challenges, but there is also a lot of opportunity. So I think, so I'm rambling on a bit, but it's just, how do we, with all this we've heard here, how is there some way for the organisation to come in and evaluate the services and things that we can offer and help us put together a plan so that we can get more consistency of funding that's longer term, that means we can invest. And also lots of organisations like ours are doing lots, and a lot of people around here probably don't understand how much we're actually doing. But we're at risk, okay? The cost of living, the energy costs for our sites tripled in the last 4 or 5 years, and it's obviously going to get worse. We're on the edge every single month paying salaries, and we need support and that sort of thing, because there are some great setups around South Yorkshire.
Good. A few more points.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's great to hear all the different layers of activity, and I know that this has happened because you've got the right people who are working together. You've worked in a way that I think you've panned out from this board and from the sets of like different kind of strategic priorities, the sort of system mechanics, and looked at it through a different perspective, and just see that layer of young people's voices, the work that Esther's doing, what John was describing. It's really important, but actually how does that guide and catalyse investment? I think that's something we need to really grasp and really take from this, because I think it actually provides a blueprint for a whole set of other things that could be done in a South Yorkshire space, but it's finding the right layers, finding the right connection points for that, you know, having the right infrastructure in the right places to do it, and recognising that investment is different to kind of putting the cost of money in on a short-term basis. But I think that kind of ability to have independent voice, to be led by people who are in receipt of support or need to be empowered to kind of lead their own change. Really interesting in the physical activity aspect of it. We've got amazing sports facilities across South Yorkshire. We've got a lot of players who are trying to increase the number of young people that have got access to that. There's something really fundamental that's creating barriers. It's not just about people having access to it, it's something else. And I think that what you start to dig into is the essence of where actually we could unlock some of the need differently and direct decisions differently.
So, Greg, and I've got Rachel, and then allow you to come back, and then I'm finishing the conversation. Greg.
Very quickly, building on the same theme, there's something about as statutory sector commissioners, willfully shifting our commissioning to provide more stability to voluntary community providers, and where there are for profit, the care sector is largely going to venture capital. We can make choices to shift that from the sector or social enterprise providers and do an awful lot more social good in the process, and limiting the friction cost multi-year funding performance regime. There is something to do around the delivery versus infrastructure, widgets versus social value, broad, picking up on your point, broad stream long-term investment versus narrowly produce X widgets. That we can make choices in that space, and we should. Our commissioning framework should reflect that.
Richard, and then I'll come back to
Whether I made that happen.
It's probably either part A or part B of that same statement, which isn't surprising seeing as we do the same job in different places. But I know we've got a discussion or a look later about how we arrange and what we do, but kind of naming the crux of kind of three broad areas that we seem to always get to and should be in our gift as a organising system. So voluntary sector and short-term funding flows, and I wish it was as simple as just evaluate it and then the funding. I wish it was that simple, but there are some things that we can do more simply, and it's about the bravery for doing that. Funding flows you've mentioned there, I'm not sure what the funding flows will be around neighbourhoods. I don't think they're guaranteed, but I think what we've heard is that we've got heaps of assets and things and bits going on in our area. So how do we repurpose, bring those together, systematising things that we've got and assets in schools, neighbourhoods, statutory, non-statutory services. And then the last one, going back, Piers, to what you said at the start, which was around footprints. It's super challenging for me as a Director of Public Health in my Doncaster place to service that job, plus being present and realise all the opportunities with South Yorkshire bits. And just the two little nibbles of things that I saw on the screen, the one that was there the campaign South Yorkshire, I was thinking, oh, some of our younger people in Doncaster won't see themselves as a South Yorkshire resident, and I need to say that. And then screen time's been mentioned twice. There's a big project iKids at the moment around screen time that's recruiting from a Yorkshire and Humber population. Actually, if we're saying less screen time, more books, then it's great to have that. As I said, it's like all that bubbling of what you can offer, but it's really difficult to service both of those footprints. So yeah, just naming those three things: ongoing robust funding the voluntary sector, funding flows, we might be repurposing what we've got, and then the ability to service different footprints.
Right, thank you. Can we finish with you?
Thank you. Oh, it's exciting. Honestly, I'm so happy. Thank you so much, and a huge thanks again to Nicola and the team for all of this. I mean, definitely feels like we're at a point where we need to be courageous and bold, and the hard wiring part of it will be critical. We need to shift. The hospital sector is too big. We need to be moving, resources out of the hospital sector into our neighbourhoods, which need to include the schools in those neighbourhoods. That is different to adult services as well. Just on your point about leadership, though, I do think we have built a lot of trust in terms of the work that we're doing across South Yorkshire and children and people, and the sustainability will be critical. There are some of us who transcend place, neighbourhood place, South Yorkshire, national, that's our jobs. And there are others whose job it is to work at place. So there's something about, we don't all have to be doing all the same things at the same time, do we? But we need to work out how do we translate it into what's the right environment locally as well, as part of that hard wiring. So I believe we can do that really strongly, and there's an urgency now, which is where we started from, that kind of sense of how do we move forward on this. So I think, we'll take from what everybody's fed back today, look at how we set up what the board is, had some good conversations in terms of relationship with Simco as well within that, but moving to a system architecture that's got that sustainability will be critical in that. I've got every belief we can do it. Absolutely.
Thank you. That was great. And I thought the session, it looked at the start, and I said to all of them, this looks like a lot of time. Actually, probably was a better way of us doing our business. I've had a lot of time to discuss issues. It's a big issue. You look at the preschool to the 16 to 24, and we don't consider that enough. So I found that really helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Insights Bank, Barbara.
Hello.
Hi everyone.
Don't go, Karen.
Hi, Barbara Coyle. I'm the head of data and insights for South Yorkshire ICB. Katie Davison. I'm deputy director of involvement for the ICB. And we're going to talk to you today about our insights bank. Right, Anne, could you do the? It's not going on the web page visual. Sorry, it's not going on the. It's still on the slides. Oh, you don't want it to go to the web page. Sorry, bit of an update. So it was really important for us to bring this to you today because the origins of the Insights Bank started in this meeting. I think it was one of the very first meetings we had, and I was talking to you about data and outcomes, and I was challenged about, well, where do I, data's all well and good, but what about what people actually think and feel in their hearts and their minds, and how are we going to take that into account? So I mean, it's really important to us that we have a parity between hard quantitative data and the qualitative data. So that sort of gave rise to the Insights Bank. So I wanted it to be as easy for you to log in and find out, or, not log in, but just Google, if you like, what do people think and feel in children's mental health in South Yorkshire? What do they think in Doncaster? What do Gypsy and Roman travellers think about access to their healthcare? And I wanted that to be as easy. You can log in and find now how many people smoke, drink, live and die in South Yorkshire really easily over our website. So this was our equivalent of that hard data. So it's South Yorkshire wide. And basically I'm going to do a live demo to show how easy it is to use. So bear with. But there's basically two things you do in our Insights Bank. You find an insight, or you can share an insight. And to upload an insight, it's really simple form, and we just ask you a few questions about what this report is kind of capturing. And what we're after here is not data. We are actually after here is any insights you've done out in the community. Someone somewhere usually writes that up or produces something about that. So this is a space where you can share that and advocate for all those voices that you heard, and making sure that someone else has the ability to hear what you heard. So you basically go in and sort of talk about a few, takes a couple of minutes to upload this information, and then you can hit upload. And that's where we ask people then to attach that report that they've got. Might be a PDF, it might be, we've got some examples certainly from the children's world where we've shared art that children had drawn to describe their health journey. So you can upload anything really. We do ask name and contact details, although that's not shared on the website. We need that because we do a first pass kind of quality check to make sure that it's not gobbledygook, the file's not corrupted and things like that. So, so that is a bit of assurance about what's shared in there. But once you then share insights, people can then find it. So if you have done a really important piece of work, and I've worked really closely with Nick and all the Chili Pet work, so we want to make sure we've maximised it. We don't want to waste any voice that we've heard. So this is a place where you can go in and find. So if I do children's mental health, and then we can see what reports have we got in here that sort of meet that criteria. And it provides me then a list of all the resources that have been uploaded and shared across South Yorkshire. So the idea behind this is that you're not starting from scratch. Our biggest complaint when we go out and talk to communities, I think Kate will say, people say, you've already asked me this, I said this to so-and-so last time, and they don't ever feel like the conversation moves on. The idea behind this, you can find that insight, hear what they've already said, and then ask the next question. So it becomes a conversation and not a repeating duplication of what's already been asked. So that is essentially it. Like I said, it was really simple. I did a live demo, it didn't crash. But I'm now going to head back to Katie. And Kate is going to give us some update on where we're up to, because it was launched in June. It's the first class.
I can start anyway. As Barbara said, it's been a couple of years in the making. I've been here a couple of times, I think, and updated you along the way. So what we've done since we launched it in June is we wanted to come back with a bit of so how is it going? So we've done a bit of an evaluation. The evaluation is a report now, and I'm happy to share that. We did share it pre-meeting because it wasn't quite finished when the papers were shared, because we had a steering group meeting last week. But these are some of the key figures from within that report. Just to pull out a few things, these are the usage statistics that you can take from the website. So what we know is that the website is being looked at least once a day, which for a new website, that's pretty good. It's had 4,000 views from 300 users, and people are spending a bit of time on it. And what that also tells us is that people are returning. So that gives us a good indication that people are finding the website useful if they're on it. And that we've had 150 uploads since the launch. But we are finding that people are using it more for finding insights than they are for uploading, which is fine again for a new website, because we think it takes time. People have to find a value in it before they give their time to upload to it. That's not moved. I've done wrong. Sorry. There we go. So we also sought out some qualitative views to support what the analytics data was telling us. So we did a survey. We also took feedback from demo visits that we've been doing. So we basically offered our time to demo this to any groups that are already in existence. So we've done it at Simca, we've done it for Sheffield Council, we've done it at Barnsley Council, Sheffield Teaching Hospital, Health Watch Leeds, BCSE Alliance. Anybody that's asked us, we've come and showed them, because obviously we want everybody to use it. So some of the feedback you'll see on there, on that slide, people who are using it are generally saying it's a great thing. And we've also got some really helpful ideas on there for improvements to the site. I think the key barrier really is time. People expect it to take more time than it does, so that stops people from engaging with it in the first place. Just before I hand back to Barbara, I think it's just worth saying one of the most frequent questions we have when we do the demo sessions is whether the Insights Bank will be impacted by the changes to the ICB. And Barbara will touch on it a bit more in her next slide. From a resourcing and keeping it up to date point of view, we don't expect to see that changed. However, we did have some plans for evolving the Insights Bank to the next stage, which maybe won't be able to be led by the ICB in the same way we were expecting them to be. So that's one of the asks today, is how can we work together more for the next evolution of the Insights Bank.
Yeah. One of the big developments that we've trialled is building in AI chat boxes into the site, so that you could also say, out of those 200 resources, find me the ones that are specifically about, children 11 to 13 in Doncaster, so you'd have a much better way of articulating and summarising what's there, as well as then also to summarise what's in there, because if there's 250 resources, how do you don't want to have to read all of those, how can you get a sense of what they are saying in an easy way? And AI is really, I think, geared up to support us there. It's just the person who's leading that won't be in our structures in the new ICB. So we are explicitly trying to find some collaboration opportunities around AI.
We have had a meeting with Barnsley Tech Town as well, haven't we, to look at that, which was facilitated by Simca. So we're hopeful that we might be able to move on.
Yeah. A quick shout out and acknowledgements to our steering group, sort of members past and present. So we do have a range of people represented in there. And a particular shout out to Health Watch Doncaster, who did the first pass for us, got us our first 100 resources uploaded. And then also Barnsley Council engagement team, who did all our user testing and user interface for us. But yeah, prompts for discussion. It started here, and I'd like you to help us set our direction for where it now goes. So how can we help embed how we use this and making sure that people do share what they found out? That, you know, if we've got too many people wanting to find stuff, you know, that's a good news, isn't it? There's people want to hear, but not enough people are sharing what they have heard. So what can we do? What can you do as an ICB? What can you do back in your organisations? And is there a sense of who should own and drive this? Some feedback we also got about it is health focused and should it be wider? And lastly, any thoughts around opportunities for our collaboration and AI?
So just to add in as well, I should have said, Barbara, in terms of the 150 uploads that have happened since we launched it, the bulk of those are from 3 organisations. So we are still, and they are NHS organisations and Health Watch. So we are very much driving it, and we would love to see more of our partners uploading to it.
Barbara, Katie, that was really helpful and really interesting stuff. I think there's a real set of issues here that you put at the end, which is one, who owns it, what kind of data does it get? You know, and as an ICB, our new role doesn't look like this. It just looks really valuable and helpful, and how do we keep it going? And you want this to be wider than health, don't we? We've just had a discussion on children's services that shows how much wider than health it really needs to be. That should be what this is like, isn't it? I mean, that's just a little cameo, but it's not an one. So there is something here about other organisations talking to us about what we do with this and how we do it differently and better, I think. Greg?
It's a great example of an infrastructure investment. I think Sheffield Council is using it as part of its community strategy. I think it is. I hope it is, because I've nudged that quite hard. And it should be owned by civil society. It needs an organisation alone. And I don't know the answer to that one. But
well, we need to think about it offline. I think.
Solvable problem.
Yeah.
Wherever we do the eventual ownership thing, we should not transfer the risk to the voluntary community sector as a fundamental point of principle. So it has probably ought to be owned by the statutory sector, and I think it's probably relatively easy to resolve issue.
Yeah. But I think it needs some resolution over the next 2 or 3 months between us all. And maybe it's you and I can do this offline.
Yeah.
Some really good stuff in there.
I think in terms of uploading information, I mean, all as organisations, we all do that anyway as evidence. You know, I'm inspected externally, so we have to have this log of information anyway. It's just making sure then that it's expired there, or there's an obligation to do it, or whether, for instance, I'm CQC regulated, would it be that CQC and look at stuff like that? So could you get them on board just as an external auditor, really? If you're obliged to do it, you're more inclined to upload it. I don't give myself another job, but
you're right. We are producing this stuff routinely, many of our organisations. We want to get them into the habit of routinely putting it on here as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
We should be held to account for how we share, not just what we've done and written.
Really helpful. I think we do need to pick some stuff offline. Stephen, you and I can perhaps do this next month or so. Yeah. Shared investment fund. Karen.
Hi.
You're coming back. Yeah, I thought you were going to run out there on me.
I think Stephen's going to introduce.
I'm sorry. A couple of things from so this is another one of those pieces of work actually. That was right word is, but was conceived here, birthed here, whatever. Has just been sponsored. So this is like another good example of actually the value that the board has actually placed upon some of this stuff. This report, in terms of what council is describing, in some senses, is just an update of where we're up to. So work has been ongoing. Some great people beavering away to sort of work through some of the sort of like basic design principles about how this thing will work. So in some senses, those recommendations here are to sort of note the progress, particularly around the work we're doing in terms of sort of working through some of the financial investments that sit underneath that, which we've got support around. Think and support the initial focus of this stuff as a way into testing the validity of the model and to champion this as a longer term thing that has to start somewhere. I think my general point before I hand over to Karen is like, and it has resonance with occasion Barbara's presentation as well, is the more this conversation we've had around shared investment fund has been absolutely brilliant, because it's transcended the shared investment fund into thinking about some of those really massively important foundational conversations you need to have about what supports some of the stuff that we heard about this morning in terms of sustainability funding and the rest of it, and how can we singularize and develop collaborative models around this, which actually has that constancy of purpose point, but also starts to grow out what we're trying to do. And it would be this if successful, we want a significant building block in that conversation. So we've made good progress, but a lot more to do. But we do need the support of people in this room to keep this thing up and get it up and running, and then to sustain it.
Thank you, Stephen. And just to say, yeah, the conversation earlier towards the end of the Children and Young People's Alliance discussion, where the kind of the importance of the voluntary sector and the way in which we find some really good approaches to supporting its work and sustaining its work. It was just wonderful to hear that conversation, and it really kind of resonates really well with what we're going to describe we're attempting to do with the Shared Investment Fund. So, as Stephen said, at previous ICP board meetings, we have talked about this. It's conceived here. We've come back to report on our progress, and again, this is an update on where we're at with our thinking, and we've progressed in 2 key areas since the last time we came to speak. So, to recap, the Shared Investment Fund is a partnership ambition to create a scaled long-term fund that leverages a breadth of local and national investors to support and invest in the vital work that the voluntary community sector does to improve the health of our local communities. That's the concept and the ambition. So we want this to be big, we want this to be long-term, we want this to really dig into the breadth of outcomes that the voluntary and community sector support. And when you think that we've got around 7,000 organisations and groups in the voluntary sector in South Yorkshire, nearly half of those are explicitly supporting children and young people and families, probably many more than that. Well over half would identify as supporting health and wellbeing. The sector has such a vital role to play, and we know the challenges that the sector is experiencing. So this is one of many solutions. What I've previously shared with the group is the progress that we've made in terms of building consensus on the importance of doing this. And actually, I think what Stephen's described there, the conversation has transcended a fund model. It's gone into very high level consensus that all partners are really recognising the vital role that the sector plays and the importance that the sector is able to thrive. And that's quite challenging at the moment. We've agreed the importance of the voluntary sector in the lead in this fund management approach, and to work with communities to shape the approach. We've agreed and recognised the opportunity for the fund to support and strengthen a breadth of outcome opportunities, including children and young people, the big National Health Service shifts, pathways to work, health inequalities, to name only a few. And we've created some local design principles. So since we last updated, we have made some brilliant progress. The first thing that we've done is we've recognised that we're going to start small and we're going to scale up. And we want to scale up as quickly as possible, but we do need to start small to test proof of concept. So what we've done is kind of discussed this across the partners. So that includes the NHS, SIMCA, the local authorities, the voluntary community sector. And where we kind of landed on in terms of focus for the first 2 years was to test out a model of investing into the voluntary sector to support health creation in communities. So we want to understand potential social models of health through catalyst investment into voluntary and community organisations, and to understand how that works in the emergent models that we're seeing across South Yorkshire. And I think if we do that, we've got opportunity to build out over time so that we can leverage additional funds in to support a much broader breadth of opportunity.
it aligns really well with South Yorkshire's current priorities. So we've got Doncaster and Rotherham in the National Neighbourhood Health Implementation Programme. South Yorkshire may potentially be a leader in prevention nationally. There's so much that this can align with. And so the first question that we wanted to bring to you was, can you support that potential focus for the first 2 years? So help creation to support and establish the role of the sector in emergent neighbourhood health models. The second major area of progress is around investment. So we have reached a point where we have in principle financial commitment from all of our public sector partners now for the first 2 years of the fund. And that is actually a huge milestone. So I just really want to thank everyone who's been involved in supporting this to get to that point. It's hugely significant because it enables us to really kind of get into leverage conversations and opportunities now with local and national investors. And that's the kind of the focus over the coming months. So what we want to do is identify how we can leverage additional investment into the fund to grow it quickly. And we're working with our national partners to link into opportunities such as the Cabinet Office established Office for Impact Economy, which has got a real interest in investing in neighbourhood health models across the country. South Yorkshire is positioned and ready to be an area that could go early on some of that. We're liaising with national colleagues around things like the Better Futures Fund opportunity, which will be seeking to invest into children, people and families to improve lives. And when we set this idea in motion, one of the things that we set out to do was to increase South Yorkshire's opportunities to really leverage private and philanthropic sector investment locally as well to see with the regional partners. So that's an opportunity too. So our second kind of question to bring to you was, could you all help us to champion this model? There's an opportunity to put this fund as a kind of a visible, accessible landing space for investment into supporting our communities via bunch and community sector. But we need to kind of develop some of those opportunities and we need to land them into that space. So our question is, could you help us with that? And they're the things that we're going to be focusing on. So Stephen said, the ask really is to note the progress that we're making with that focus over the first 2 years, but building up and as quickly as possible. And to kind of support us in our progress in shaping a fund of scale and sustainability and identifying new opportunities to support that.
Really helpful, Carol. I mean, this is probably about the third or fourth time we've been hearing this environment. Third, okay, thank you. So it is utterly consistent with what we've said. Just want to make sure people are comfortable with the way we are taking this. But it does go right back to what we talked about children and people, which is how do we create long-term resourcing for the voluntary sector? It doesn't mean we won't have difficult choices when we create the fund, but it is about trying to do that in a coherent way. Correct.
Still in, thank you. Two thoughts, I have loads of thoughts, but two for quickness of time. I wouldn't do too much dancing around handbags, chasing around philanthropic funding. They all come and say we'll invest multi-millions of dollars of pounds and they never come. So tread carefully on that. We know that to our cost. And secondly, still on the philanthropic funding thing, well, if it's the Purdue Foundation or the Betfred Foundation, how do we act then? I think we need some principles about philanthropy, because if it's the Betfred Foundation, you'll have me being a bit grumpy with your sauce in advance, etc. You know what I mean?
No, I think it's a legitimate point. Sometimes we have to cope with your grumpiness. I speak from very personal experience, but no, I think it's a really important one of our principles going in.
What if it was the British American Tobacco Foundation? There's no difference between that and the Betfred Foundation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that I've been involved in this.
I know you have.
But I think what is really needed is that the kind of broader neighbourhood development across South Yorkshire is capable of aligning and connecting to this investment work. So it's looking at where's the interfaces and where is that kind of going to become part of our South Yorkshire approach. And I think that we need to respond to that and find a way to kind of embed that.
That's great. Carol, thank you. Really helpful. Thank you, Stephen. Partnership working for health next steps. Mariana.
The key news is we've reached the final agenda.
We haven't Greg's got any other business, I'm warning you.
And hopefully you've had an opportunity to have a look at the paper that's shared and the slides that were appended. What I'm not going to do is talk you through all of the slides, some of which I know that we've seen before here. But what I will do, if it's okay, is to just kind of quickly talk through some of the key points in the paper. So to start with a little bit of a reminder, so if you remember in the autumn time, on the back of the kind of publication of the National 10-Year Health Plan, the South Yorkshire Wealth Report, the work that was starting to commence across some of our local authorities around the emerging South Yorkshire strategy. It was kind of at that point, wasn't it, that as partners we felt like the right time to refresh and renew our South Yorkshire Partnership working for health. So what the paper does is give you an update on the conversations that we've been having so far, particularly acknowledging the opportunity that we've got with the emerging South Yorkshire strategy. So the opportunity we've got in terms of new arrangements, aligning and supporting the delivery of that. If you remember, we had a joint working group that came together just before Christmas, and the paper kind of reiterates some of the findings that came from that group, and the slides are actually the product of that working group. And what you'll see on slides, I think it is, they're actually on pages, aren't they? So it's on 11 and 12 in the paper. And what you'll remember is that's the draft criteria that we considered here at the end of January at the board. And that was really a culmination of all those conversations through the joint working group and beyond, and we captured that in a set of draft criteria. And when we had the conversation here at the board, my recollection was that people generally recognised those, felt comfortable about the direction of travel. There were some things in there that people were keen to ensure that we really strengthened. So particularly, the kind of valuing lived experience that came through really strongly. South Yorkshire added value, collaborating where we can add value across South Yorkshire came through really strongly. So we took that on board. Since the last board, we've also had a kind of a further leadership steer. So Oliver, supported by Sarah Norman on behalf of the local authority chief execs, and Chris Edwards as our interim chief exec, they kind of provided a further leadership steer for us, and you'll see that's captured on slide 10. And what that does is really kind of reform the direction of travel we set out in those draft criteria. So what we've been doing since then is thinking about how do we use all of that information, and how do we maybe start to set out in a diagram form what that might be describing to us in terms of what we could be looking towards around new arrangements in terms of the South Yorkshire Partnership for Health. And so you'll see that there is a diagram on page 13 that starts to look at some of the components in there you'll really recognise. So, focusing on common policy areas, being outcome focused, valuing lived experience. I won't go through all of them, but you really recognise them from the conversations. And then what we also start to do is think about some of the form options. And in the form options, we kind of started from the kind of the minimum, the kind of the leadership of our statutory organisations to continue to work in line with the legislation. Then we started thinking about how important it is to build that and strengthen that connectivity with our health and wellbeing boards, thinking about some of the other really key perspectives that we've benefited from here, so voluntary community social enterprise sector, and then how we could develop some of those other relationships with other developing partnerships, so things like the academic health partnership, for example. There's a little bit more information in the slides around, the kind of some of the options that came through, and you'll see that, thinking about how do we support CYP, thinking about partnership working across South Yorkshire also came through in those conversations. Where we have got to with all of that is if you look at the end of page 5 in the paper, what we've captured is a kind of a number of key points that are almost like a general consensus of where we've landed. And I think where we've landed is what the new arrangements for South Yorkshire should look like and be is absolutely well connected to the emerging South Yorkshire strategy. So align and reinforce the ambitions. Be part of a whole system approach that's about improving health outcomes and equity, and focus on where we can add value from a South Yorkshire collaboration perspective. Benefit from a membership that brings in a wide range of different perspectives, and potentially think about beyond our kind of our usual partners. Have a prevention and equity focus. So this was something that really came through the conversations. There's an opportunity around a potential South Yorkshire prevention. Concentrate on a smaller number of priorities and deliverables where we think collaboration will enable us to be most impactful. So in essence, we're really thoughtful about where we spend our energy and time. So I think they're the kind of the things that have come through in terms of a general consensus. I think the other thing to say is that all of the conversations that we've had have been absolutely in the context of all of the incoming changes, both for the ICB and for system partners. So, you know, although the kind of longer term aspiration might be around a new South Yorkshire Partnership for Health, there is something about, you know, what could be a simpler, pragmatic next step. And I think where we've managed to get to is the potential thinking around a focus at both a forum that could focus around prevention, and some of the conversations with our local authority chief execs, simple colleagues over the last month have been that actually that feels like a place where we'd like to do some further detailed work now to look at what that could look like for us. So just before we open it up, can I just remind everybody of the recommendations in the paper? So the first one is to note the progress. There's been a lot of conversations, folks. And actually particularly acknowledge the opportunity around the emerging South Yorkshire strategy, and whatever new arrangements we've put in place, having an opportunity to support the delivery of that strategy together. To consider the emerging thinking and the way we're starting to describe what some of this could look like. So building on the criteria that we talked about last time, and then also for you to provide any reflections or thoughts ahead of a further discussion with the Mayor and the Policy Strategy Planning Group, which for those of you that may not know, that is where our local authority, Simca, chief executives come together with our political leaders and join up with a conversation with the integrated care.
Thank you. So that's really an update. If people comfortable with the direction of travel, what it feels like is that firstly, we are committed to an ICP going forward. There was talk about a year ago that do we have ICPs, will they be made compulsory? That would need statutory change. We felt in South Yorkshire, regardless of that, this was something that was valuable. So that's first thing. Second thing is, but there's a danger it tries to do too much, and I think the concentration around equity and prevention feels intellectually the right thing to do. And then we're next step with our local authority leadership and the new ICB leadership around, well, what does that look like then? What's the membership and how do we both enable ourselves to take action and have a wide enough group of people to, the voluntary sector others to talk to? And that's the next step we're doing. That makes sense?
I'm not a member of the board, but can I offer a view? Is that I suppose it'd be good to have an early conversation about whether the partnership board that we were talking about earlier is one and the same or a subsection of what you've described. And then I
think it's consistent with it, Ruth, by the way.
Yeah, it's just how the architecture is in it. And then the second thing I'd just offer is, as a provider chief executive, we are nowhere in here. And I think there's something about as anchor institutions in our statutory organisations, how are you leaning into them much more to ask for the kind of leadership for the greater good? Because people want to get involved, but they're not anywhere in here at the minute. So I'd offer that as a view.
Even they're not joking.
Yes, I agree with those comments. Right, and there's been a lot of consensus on the key points, but there's not necessarily been consensus all the way through. Marian's done that eloquently describing, not consensus on some of the stuff that sits below it. But what is emerging is that point around that this is picking up Pierce's point. This isn't a subset of something else. This is something which is building upon common purpose, which is emerging through South Yorkshire strategy. So my first point is that the discussion we've had this morning around the Children and Young People's Partnership fits fairly and squarely within this context. So it locates itself very effectively, but we haven't got the organogram or whatever the organic thing is that you have to produce. The second thing is, and this has been washed through both with the Mayor and with local authority chief execs and some of the policy leads in Simca, is there's a real desire to have a focus around prevention. And to not have a health board or a housing board or a DIR board, but to actually try and bring some of this stuff together in sort of broader conversation around people, places and stuff like that. And I think actually, again, the children and young people's discussion we had this morning sits incredibly well within that construct, actually. And I think there's almost like let's not be overly elegant in terms of the design of this. Let's try and sort of see where we can be impactful. That's obviously.
Good.
Quickly, agree, kudos to Marianne, especially for marshalling it through. I know you slightly bullets on this one. Thirdly, there's some thought, do this afterwards, on where and how this squares with other South Yorkshire partnerships that aren't boundaries to one actor or one institution. And I don't know what that looks like, but there will be other South Yorkshire partnerships. Now, does this fit with those?
I think what we're not trying to do here is be so thoughtful in the detail around the mechanics of this that we miss some point. That we really do feel there is merit in us having at a high level across local authorities, mayoralty and the health. How do we get into prevention and health in a way that we haven't done? That's what we're trying to do. Doesn't mean to be perfect. That's what we're trying. You will see announcements around the recruitment of my successor, for instance, that are utterly consistent with this coming up short. Very short. Yeah.
So I think it's really helpful, and I think it would be good to kind of evaluate this from a sort of asset-based perspective, and just thinking about that interface between independent voice or community organisations. Actually, on what basis would they be brought in, and what's the value of that connection? And I think the ability to kind of get that sort of other view, the kind of innovation, the critical French stress testing. I think that we need to kind of look at it in an asset-based way rather than who are the key people that should be around the table at which points. So I think it would be helpful to kind of see that in the plans going forward.
Thank you. Really helpful. Thank you. Thank you very much, Marianne, Steve. And the agenda item, we have any other business from Greg?
Very quickly. This is a flag for a future agenda item in whatever format we currently have in the future. The long-awaited neighbourhood health guidance was published last week. We were all delighted to read it, I'm absolutely sure. There's a bit of health versus healthcare in there. It focuses very strongly on healthcare, that's not health. It's permissive. I know for a fact there will be no more tablets of stone. I'm absolutely clear on that. There's a conversation to be had somewhere, somehow, about how the various neighbourhood-shaped agendas across 5 government departments I can think of come together for a population at various levels of administrative geography in a way that adds up to more than some of the parts. Of note, the Sheffield turnout today is quite low because it's the same day that Emma is fronting the This Is Us celebration event, which is a really, really, really good example of the ICB going way beyond the usual thing. I'm nervy of saying that because it's for this Sheffield, etc. But it's a good example, and I know for a fact there'll be other good examples across South Yorkshire. So I suppose one will circulate the video that comes from that. Just you watch that at your leisure. And secondly, and ask for a future agenda item on what the thing called neighbourhood health means to us, because we'll all view it very differently, understandably. So we need to work out through.
The guidance is great, but it does allow us to all view it very differently as well.
Indeed, that's a joy.
Indeed. Yeah, no, I think it's a really good idea that we picked up. I think we'll pick it up in a number of forums, but I think there is some value in this group having a discussion on it. But again, I don't think it's just for this group to be directly about how it's operated in different places, and that's different neighbourhoods, not just different places. Okay, thank you very much. I've kept you waiting 2 minutes longer than I intended. I apologise for that. Thank you very much. You've got your lives back. Thank you.